So if you're tired, take a little break and start over again. If you missed a step, look around and look for that next step, because there's always gonna be that next step. There's always gonna be that path, and the solution is right in front of us. And you gotta listen to yourself. Listen to yourself. Listen to that inner voice. Why are you doing it?
Find your why.
Yeah, 100%.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Real Estate Investors Club podcast. I'm here today with Jeff-Andy Clergé, who's the general manager of the Royal LePage Mellor Group. Welcome, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing great. Doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Great. And so Jeff actually does a bunch of other things. He has his own podcast. He is a real estate investor himself. And so hopefully we'll get onto that a little bit later. But I want to just dive right in. So Jeff, maybe you can tell me how you came to occupy that position and exactly what you do at Mellor Group.
So sometimes I feel I don't do anything, and other times I feel I do almost everything. But so how it all came about is I started my real estate journey as an investor before. So maybe we'll go on that part later. What, 7-8 years ago, but where I always had that interest into real estate. So I in the past I worked in media, in the media world. I worked for agent marketing, PR agencies. So I was always in the marketing world, and I always felt that there were opportunities in the real estate world through all my experience in marketing, in entrepreneurship, as I as yeah. So there were opportunities. So I came about to meeting bunch of owners. So COVID just started. I already had my plan of I wanted to know all the owners in Quebec. So at one point I told
Like
myself,
by
okay,
owners,
so
just one second. By owners, you mean the owners, people who own real estate agency, brokerages?
exactly. So
Okay.
that's right. So my goal was to know everybody. So because I wanted to integrate that ecosystem, like any ecosystem that exists, you need to understand it, but also need to kind of make a name for yourself, right? Because I was in the PR agency, the PR world, the media world, I always understood that part. So for me, it was very important to understand the actual ecosystem of real estate agencies, as I wanted to be an owner. So after multiple meetings, someone put me in contact with Etienne Mellor, and that person said it was a she. She said, "Yeah, I think there's a lot of similitude in the mindset, in the goals, and maybe there's a fit." So I remember that day I was in Ottawa. I drove down to Montreal, and I met Etienne for the first time, and already I saw sort of a connection, and we kept connecting. I think every month or so we were talking about business, talking about a bunch of stuff, and at one point he understood what was my goal, and I understood by obviously knowing me better and knowing him better, and we said, you know what, why not try to join venture? So that's how I came upon becoming his right hand, and into this adventure, that journey that we've been building for the past year and a half, almost 2 years, and now we want to conquer the world. So that's the goal. So there you go. It's as simple as that.
via via Quebec real estate. But so let's
Well,
back the
just Quebec,
truck up a little bit.
not just Quebec,
Oh, okay. Sorry.
the
Sorry. The
world, the
world.
world, it's the world.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
advantage, the advantage that I have with Etienne is that, and because Etienne is a little bit older than me, we're 10 years apart. So I'm like, well, everything that we're starting, we'll forget we will be able to build more and more, because even when he will want to, and I know he won't never want to slow down, but I'm always gonna be a little bit younger and always have that extra next energy, that energy to push and push and push. And I'm sure if he hears that, he'll take it as a challenge and wants to pop, definitely beat me and get and be better than me like always. But and anyways, that's all.
Okay. But so if we back things up a little bit, and so this is the Real Estate Investors Club podcast. So talk to us a little bit about investing and about how you got into it and what your experience has been as an investor thus far.
I was very fortunate. My mom always had an interest into entrepreneurship and owning her own business. So even though my mom is a nurse, and but she always had that entrepreneurship side of her. So I think I took from her. And very young, she always wanted to own. So, but never got the opportunity or the will to just jump in it. So I still remember, I was maybe it was with around 20 years ago. We were talking, obviously 20 years ago, a bit more than 20 or 24, almost 25 years ago. We were talking, and I was still very young, and we visited a place. It was in a plateau. It was Saint Joseph, Saint Denis, and there's a reason why I'm saying this. So we visited the place, and she's like, "Oh, maybe I should buy it." And she was still looking for it. And imagine 25 years ago, how much that it was just a condo apartment. You can't imagine how much it was 25 years ago. It was nothing at the time. But she wasn't willing to do the jump at that time because of multiple factors. So 5 6 years later, that same place went on sale because now I told her, and I think that was the trigger for her. So then she jumped ship. She decided to jump ship and decided to buy her first triplex. So I kind of understood what was the process and all. And then years later, when I started to make a little bit of money, I said, you know what, it's my turn to do it. So I jumped in a triplex with her, and then I bought another one by myself, and then we sold, and I bought a few condos, and there you go.
And so if you can remember back to that time, what would you say were some of the main challenges, or what were like some of the hurdles that you had to get over in order to make that decision to jump in yourself?
I think that the first hurdle was ourself. I know from on my mom's side it was, and even for myself, because even when I decided to myself put that in my, is you always have that fear of do I know enough? Do I because especially myself, and I think I had to work on that a lot, but I always had the feeling that I had to understand everything before doing any type of moves. So understand the whole structure, understand all the steps, and understand everything behind before even jumping. But after a certain time, you realize even though you think you'll know everything, you're gonna come upon a situation where, like today, for example, when I say today, the last few months, I had a situation where we had some repairs, and it was the first time that I had to go through um, so many delays for a simple thing. Also, I always understood delays for repairs and for renovation, and understand the costs, and those. I'm very I with time I'm willing to take more risk. It's something that I managed to work on, so I'm very. When my wife, if you ask my wife, every move that I make, my wife, it makes her freak out because she's like, he's just jumping in. But I had a situation a few months ago. Well, a few months ago, it just closed yesterday, where we had just a simple masonry repair, very simple, couple of $1,000s. It's nothing major, but it took almost 4 months to being complete. But 4 months usually it's I don't know. It would be like for foundation repairs. It would be for a whole where we do a whole strip and full renovation of an apartment. But for simple bricks, it took 4 months. I found it was insane because I like to be efficient, but it wasn't efficient. So that's anyway. So to come back to your is ourself, whereas though I think this is the first, at least for me, the first hurdle was myself.
And then if I ask you where you are today, in terms of your ambitions in investing and what you feel like might be some of the obstacles that you're facing, I guess it's got to be like 10, 15 years down the line. How would you describe that? Are you still in your own way, or do you feel like there's different kind of obstacles that are there today?
It's I think so. I kind of slowed down the buying the last 2 years. Yeah, I'd say the last 2 years. Well, I bought a condo last November, um, because so we wanted to buy a house, didn't pan out because of the crazy market, obviously. And when I say a house, like a house, not like not as an investment, really an emotional buy, which it's really hard for me. But I mean, you have a family, you have 2 kids, you have the wife, she and we want a nice house, so it's nothing logical, but it was way too crazy. So after being outbid like 10 times, I decided to, let's just change the game plan and buy another investment. and by buying investment, something that would fill our needs, at least on short term, and when we finally decide to buy the actual house, then we can keep it as an investment. But I still decided 2 years ago to kind of slow down because I wanted to keep. I wanted to use my cash, my money for other type of investments, because I wanted to kind of open my spectrum of active of so I wanted to spend. So I was
Portfolio.
looking. Yeah, portfolio, exactly. So I wanted to. So that's why I wanted to go into owning an agency, because I knew I would need a bit of capital. So I said, you know what, maybe I'm going to slow down a little bit, but I want to go back into it. I definitely want to go back into it. I think there will be opportunities out there, especially with what we see now. When things, or if things actually crash, I think I'll be ready to do some moves.
Well, I think first of all, it's got to be very reassuring to hear that people who are in the real estate space, the professionals, like we have as much trouble as everybody else bidding on houses, housing ourselves, making those decisions, right? And so it's just like a little bit funny when, like, on the one hand, we play the role of like the professional, the expert who like has all the answers, and on the other hand, you find yourself in that situation where like you're out there just bidding against everybody else, and it's like, are we going to put that extra 50K down and jump in there at the whatever the roulette table and like put our money down with everybody else?
And the hard part is because obviously, as an investor, you want to you invest every dollar you want to invest, and you want to optimize every dollar. So but when you get to that range of, oh, I want to buy a house for my family, and that emotional side, it's just been very hard for me because we talk about multiple offers. There was an offer that we lost, and I put 140K over, and I still lost. Like, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous to a point where I'm like, was it really worth it? Like, even if we'd have won, I think I would have made nightmares if we would have won that bid. Like, yeah, definitely.
And so, like, if we, let's say, try to put the two themes together a little bit. So, here you are in the seat of the entrepreneur, general manager of like one of the, I guess, premier growing real estate labels in Montreal, if we can put it that way. What do you think are some of the skills that are necessary to succeed at that and in investing in general? Because I'm assuming, like, you see that there's some kind of a similarity between those two endeavors.
Well, you have to be able to be willing to just sacrifice. Well, obviously, make sacrifices. Being an entrepreneur is to be able to is risk management. Ultimately, if you're able to, it's risk. Is being able to risk everything for your end. for your end mean or your end goal. So obviously the it's to understand what is your goal, understand what is your vision, why are you doing the whole, why are you doing all this? Because you can, we can succeed, we can do all the money in the world, but if there's no purpose behind it, kind of doesn't make sense at one point, because you're just gonna do just to do it, right? So the a skill set for sure is just to be able to handle, or to handle that stress, or to that willing of put everything on the line to for you to succeed. But otherwise, it's be able to accept that you don't know everything. You want to learn as much as possible. You want to surround yourself by people that have made it or are better at everything that you do. Is to be able to put a team together, or to people around you to make you succeed or make you be better at everything that you do. And accept that things won't be perfect at
That's
all,
a big one.
but you still have to be able to progress and to move forward, and feel, beginning of the week we had this conversation where we're like, should we track everything we do, so that we can kind of do that self reflection of, or that self evaluation, to feel that self evaluation, and to understand where you are and where you're going. And I think it's super important, because you need to feel, maybe yeah, I do it, we do it on a daily basis, but you need to feel that you're progressing. You need to feel that you're going somewhere. And even when when you feel you're taking a step back, well, that step back, is it pushing you, or is it giving you the opportunity to go, uh, to move forward towards your goal? So you have to understand, but at first you have to understand what's your goal.
Mhm. But so there's two things I want to push you on here. And I guess the first, like, super easy one is, so what are your metrics? If you're tracking stuff, what kind of stuff are you tracking?
Well, there's so many things that we track. Well, on our business, we're all about growth, so we have to track, the how we're growing, or are we, and what are the things that makes us grow. So is it all the meetings that we manage to do, how do we actually close those meetings, how do we get those meetings, what are the initiatives that we do, or the campaigns that we do to track to get those meetings, um, for every every outcome, every events. If we do events, every we do a lot of recording. So what do we, all those initiative, what does it bring us ultimately? So these are the type of metrics that I have to look at, that we have to look at, to better understand where we're heading. And it's hard. It's hard because you realize that there's so many things, because you see that utopia business, that business model that you want and that you have, but you realize very quickly that the impact of every layer that you add, it adds another level of challenge. So even when I have, where we look at all those metrics, we're like, well, okay, well, these are the how many calls that were made, how many emails that were sent, how many texts that were sent, and you're like, well, on paper it should be always the same, and it should always be, but you realize that there's a human factor on the other side, because you have employees. I have over 20 employees. We have 4 departments that we run. And even though we know everything on paper seems to be super easy, and the framework seems to be good, and we're still working on the framework every day. We want to optimize your process, optimize your optimization, optimize everything that you do. But you realize that, wow, it can be challenging. More and more you grow, more challenges. I do believe at one point it will be easier, but even though you have the perfect metrics, and even though you do look at them, you still realize that it's always going to be a challenge.
So I want to press you on something else that you said before. So you said that entrepreneurship is about risk management. And I think on a gut level, I agree with you. Where I want to push you a little bit is, you say it's about risking everything. And I think that, to me, that sounds like a little bit too extreme, in a sense that I'm sure when you're making business decisions, no, you'll see where I'm going, right? Like, let's say I put this into the investing space because that's where I am, right? And like, yes, every acquisition, if the deal is bigger, if it's in a space that I'm not used to, for sure, there's a certain amount of risk. But part of what I'm trying to do as the captain of that ship is to mitigate the risk, right? Like, I want to know
Yeah.
that I have maybe 70% of the data, the last 30% I don't know. And so if I'm taking risks, I'm taking calculated risks. My experience of
Yes.
doing business is never, I don't play all in poker. So I wanted to just throw that back at you and be like, can you unpack what you mean a little bit when you say risk? Because I don't think you mean that every time you make a business decision, you're like
You're,
risking the farm, right?
you're right. You're right. And the reason why I talked about the risking everything is it you have there's a whole spectrum, right? When I talk about risking everything, the everything is more in the sense of, if to a certain extent you have to know, and the calls come back, it all comes back to your why. You have to understand what is your why, and based on that why, what you need to do to make it happen. So if my goal is to own an NBA team, well, no matter what I say, I will have to do a lot of sacrifices and to risk a lot to make that goal happen. But if my ultimate goal is just to grow my portfolio into my business, well, yes, the risk is going to be more of on a financial risk, on financials, and if I want to go in bigger deals, well, you have to get more capital to go into bigger deals, and that capital most likely is going to be either everything you have, or most likely everything you have, at least on my part, if I want to go into that bigger stream. But I think you're right. It's yes. When we talk about calculated risk, I think you should be doing calculated risk, and it's not everyone that should gamble everything. That and because you can still be an entrepreneur. You can still be an entrepreneur and have the balanced life. You can still be an entrepreneur and only be like a part-time entrepreneur. You can still be an entrepreneur and only have that one business that gives you that job security ish, um, uh, because you decided to buy a pizza joint, right? Um, but if you want to scale it, I think that's the variable that I didn't forget to mention. That if you want to scale it, well, depending on what extent you want to scale, well, you will have to go to that extreme, I think.
Well, do need to take on more risk. I mean, again, is it like, are you doing all in and saying I'm going to play high stakes poker in a situation where I don't have any data at all? I think no, right? Like, if there's always a
No,
balance
yeah,
of
of
making
course.
stretch goals. Like, you have to have stretch goals that are a little bit beyond your comfort zone, but it's never like,
Yes.
let me jump in and tie a blindfold over my eyes and not look where I'm going to fall, right? Like,
No, of course. You need to at least understand where you're heading a little bit, at least. So if you do that jump, at least you know that you're gonna you'll you do that jump, well, you'll land on something. You don't know what, but you'll land on something. And yes, you're right, because I think I still have a rule. I still have that rule of, okay, well, if I know, you know if I know 60% of where I'm going, I'm good. I trust myself enough that I will figure out the other 40%, because I'm
as
able,
it's happening.
thankfully, yeah,
Yeah.
to sustain that stress, to sustain the struggles, etc. But one thing that's super important is that, because I'm very transparent with my wife. My goals, I have personal goals, but we also have that ultimate goal together as a as one unit. So when it's for me, it's super important that she's on board on everything I do, even though she's can't handle it. But I want her to be on board, because we also have that common goal. It's the and so that every time we come back into why are we doing this, and we look at it and it's like, all right, let's realign, let's focus, and let's accept whatever will happen. You know, you won't buy, we won't be able to buy that super amazing house today, but I will make it that we'll make it count in 4 years, right? So,
Mhm. So what is your why, Jeff?
what is my why?
Yeah.
um, I'm very strong into family, and I want to be able to. It's kind of cliche, but I want to be able to create that generational wealth. Um, I was very as I My parents were very fortunate to give me opportunities, and I made it count. So very young, I took a lot of risk, and it paid out. And and I realized that if, because again, my why of the yes the because I want to build something for my kids. I want to build something for their kids. I want to be able to build something for multiple generations. That's my end goal. So everything I do is for that. So I have my moments of, you always have your moments of doubts, or your moments of it would be so easy if I just stay put and take the easy out. I could just have a job, and make 250K a year. I could do that. Do I want that? No. It's boring. I want to do something that counts, right? So my end goal is for the family. I want to do it for family, but not immediate family. I want to do abroad. I want to be able to even for my extended family, to be able to give opportunities. Either it's jobs, it's mentorship, it's coaching. Um, it's very it's Yeah, it's very ambitious what I want to do. I want to be able to create that ecosystem, but that starts with giving, but not just money wise. It's giving knowledge, it's giving opportunities, it's empowering, um, my family, but family, community. But it all starts with, you gotta have something very strong. So that's where I am.
That's your why. All right. So, look, we're coming kind of to the end of the time that we have together. I wanted, just by way of conclusion, to ask you if you had one piece of advice to give people who are kind of starting out, be it as entrepreneurs or as investors, and looking up at the mountain and being like, "How am I ever going to climb that?" What would be your one piece of advice to people who are standing at that point in their journey?
It's funny because you talk about that mountain, and I tell my son, who's 5 years old, who almost 5 years old, that one thing, that one phrase that I tell him, but I'm talking to myself every time that I tell him that. And it's super simple. But you realize that things are not as complicated, and there's always a solution, no matter what. There's always gonna be that solution. You just have to be creative and figure it out, and taking that step back. So, I would say there's always a solution. So that mountain is how big is that mountain? You realize at one point that there was only one way to climb that mountain, and you have to climb it. Because I mean, unless you want to stay where you are and you're happy with where you are, fair enough. But if you're not happy with what you're doing and your current position, there's a way out. And the way out is climbing. And you have to climb. And so if you're tired, take a little break and start over again. If you missed a step, look around and look for that next step. Because there's always gonna be that next step. There's always gonna be that path, and the solution is right in front of us. And you gotta listen to yourself. Listen to yourself. Listen to that inner voice. Why are you doing it?
Find your why.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, Jeff, thank you for spending this half hour with me. If people want to reach out to you, want to learn more about what you do, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can reach out all social media, Jeff-Andy Clergé, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm all platforms. They can reach out anytime. It'll be my pleasure to discuss. I love to converse. I love to talk. I love to build relationship. I'm very young in my journey, but I made it count, and I want to keep making it count. So super open to talk to anyone who's willing to grow and wants to grow, and and there you go.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry.
Okay. Bye bye.